Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's largest platform for entrepreneurs. We bring you expert advice on how to make and manage your money right, hiring right, innovation strategy. In fact, anything that matters to you, the entrepreneur, is covered here on the show. I'm Sananda Jayaseelan. Tonight, we're continuing to count down to the budget on this Leaders of Tomorrow special series with the focus on the logistics market. Let me introduce our guest joining us on the show tonight. First up is S Subramanian. He is the Senior Vice President and Managing Director at DHL Express. We also have Dhruvil Sanghvi, CEO of LogiNext, and Gunjan Prabhakaran, Partner and Leader Indirect Tax at BDO India. Mr. Subramanian, Dhruvil, Gunjan, thank you so much for your time here to talk to our viewers about what we can perhaps expect, what we're hoping the government will make announcements on as far as the logistics space is concerned. And logistics, transportation, infrastructure, all of these are definitely key areas. Everyone closely watching, what announcements will be made. So thank you so much for joining us to count down to the budget here on the Leaders of Tomorrow. Let me come first and talk and try and get a perspective from DHL. If you can tell us, what's the one headline you're perhaps expecting to hear from the government this time on the budget?
I think for me, the theme for this budget or any next few budgets, the evergreen themes will not go away. Yeah, one is, I've said it before with you, which is cost of doing business and ease of doing business.
Yeah.
And you may say, why is it relevant now? I think these two, this topic has once again been underlined in the last 8 to 10 months, when as a service provider, for example, we've gone through a phase of limited resources and unlimited demands. Yeah? And therefore, the expectation is that the logistics service provider will mend and correct everything while the industry at large is facing difficult situation. Cost of both continue to be huge areas of concern.
Dhruvil, you next. What's the one thing that you are hoping the government will announce in this budget?
I think first of all, thanks for having us and having me, Vrunda. I think for us, the most important thing is being a tech company. We are a global company. That means our customers are spread across the world. And one thing that we would expect is, as Mr. Subramanian also mentioned, the ease of doing business, but from a global trade perspective. As of now, from the seeking global investments or seeking global customers for Indian companies is not very easy. We'll talk more in details, but that's one thing that we would be expecting from the budget this year.
How about you, Gunjan?
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me over. Can't agree more with what Mr. Subramanian said, that cost is going to be the key. There have to be better efficiencies, and particularly from an indirect tax standpoint, it's high time that some of the issues under GST, they should be settled. So I'll be talking about a couple of points about GST relaxations.
Okay, so GST, in fact, is something that perhaps has been watched more closely for the logistics and infrastructure and transportation industry than any other. So, Gunjan, let me come back to you and talk about GST. Everyone is expecting that there's be some sort of lowering of rates, some commentary on GST. What are you hoping to see? What sort of clarity in terms of the GST rules are you hoping to see announcements on from the government for the logistics space?
More importantly, all of us are aware logistics clearly is the backbone for the economy. They have been operating on thin margins, and coupled with the onerous tax compliances and also loss of credits, it's like a double whammy for the sector. So one of the most important changes probably that the sector is looking forward to is relaxation on taking credits. The most prominent one that comes to my mind is even though forward charge has been made available to the sector, so the availability of the fact that GTS can charge 12% and avail full credit, or alternatively the customers can charge 5% and avail the credit. However, that puts a very onerous condition on the GTAs for reversal of credit, which is something turning out to be very onerous for the sector, not only in terms of the compliances and the monitoring that they need to undertake, but also the loss of credits. So this is one aspect where even though government has already tried giving, forward charge as a solution, but probably it's time to look at, just a concessional rate with full credit available. Why not make it available to the GTAs itself? So that's easier for them. There are more cost efficiencies available, and there is more cash outflow, so that the companies can operate with better margins.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Subramanian, how about you? I do, and I'm sure that you would have a long list of sort of things that you would wish to hear from the government when it comes to GST and taxation, and really the overall space and making it easier when it comes to ease of doing business.
But I think procedurally, a lot of things can happen. For example, we are a national player. We operate in almost all the states, and which means 25, 30 returns every month has to be filed, and as many tax assessments and audits have to be gone through every year. Yeah, so ideally, there should be, while I can file returns every month in different states, the assessment and audits have to be central. It is possible to be centralized, and therefore it will significantly remove the burden. Otherwise, currently, multiple years, multiple states, simultaneous assessments and audits, same queries. It's a nightmare, actually. And I don't think anybody around can, 4 years down the line, now claim that they have closed a few years of tax books on GST, because this complexity is very, very high. There is an opportunity for us to create the equivalent of a national service provider or national account for customers or for businesses who operate in 5 or 6 or 7 states and who pay up to a threshold level of taxation. They should be eligible for a centralized assessment and audit. It will significantly simplify things. I think this will be a great step forward. It is within the remit of being done, and I think the time for this has come.
Okay, fair enough. So that is on GST. I do also want to talk about the double taxation rate. Gunjan, this is something that you and I were discussing very briefly offline. Clarity in terms of that. What should perhaps the logistics industry push forward when it comes to their list of demands from the government?
Importantly, I think first and foremost issue has been on ocean freight, about the dual levy and double taxation, and how the companies are paying IGST at the time of import, and again as a reverse charge liability, IGST is being levied. Now it's high time. There has been a lot of litigation on the point. However, the issue is still not settled. And clearly, once and for all, probably there needs to be clarity, because a transaction can be either a supply of goods or supply of services. And we need to take, there should be some clarification soon to really take the companies out of this whole litigation, thought process. Because there are many more issues in logistics sector, particularly, which are still open to litigation. Another one being classification. So that was another point, which is an area where the government needs to clarify. So like service tax regime, probably there is a need to have a relook at service providers, and instead of a decentralized monitoring of compliances, there should be centralized monitoring.
Okay. Speaking of, sort of legal action, Mr. Subramanian, one thing that I do want to talk about and, help our viewers understand, if you think this is going to be a pressing issue and are hoping the government makes some sort of announcements on, and that is as far as licenses for businesses which are in the logistics space, I understand can be suspended on mere suspicion of any sort of, wrongdoing or misdoing. What sort of clarity are you hoping to hear from the government on this?
Currently, if you see the courier and express operators or CHAs or the custodians who run terminals at the airports, etc., all of them work under a license from the CBSE. And this can be suspended pending inquiry. And after inquiry, you might get reinstated. And therefore, it leaves a few weeks, sometimes few months, when the license is under suspension. Ideally, we should move to a situation of a perpetual license, and there should be fine and penalty when there is willful default noticed, commensurate to the offense. It can be minor technical offense, some paperwork is missing, or it is an explainable offense. Then the commensurate fine penalty can be levied if it is found to be willful default. The current regime is quite outdated. It comes from an old OBC courier era. Today, the players in the logistic industry are all global names, well invested, bring state-of-the-art processes and investment into the country. And therefore, this sector needs stability. I think it can attract significant amount of investments. It is possibly, and it has demonstrated in the last 1 year or so, how important it is for driving the economy going. I think express and courier is one of the sectors that have kept the economy going in the lockdown period. And therefore, this law and the licensing regime has to be reviewed. The good news is that it's on the table with CBIC for review, and I hope that it will be reviewed in the right direction.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick break on that note. We're back in just a moment to stay tuned. Welcome back. You're with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow Budget Edition special. In focus tonight is the logistics industry. I do want to talk about how much the overall industry has grown, but before that, I want to talk about the role that technology has played. Open through to the three of you on this panel, but Dhruvil, coming to you first. Technology, I mean, that's a no-brainer, has led the growth across all industries, more so for the logistics industry. Any announcements, any support, any incentives that you would like to see from the government when it comes to harnessing more and more of technology in the logistics industry?
I think first of all, the government needs to understand that technology players are inherently global in nature. So that means that a lot of services that we provide are not just within India, but they're outside India as well. Like, for example, even on the previous topic of double taxation, right? Currently, we have customers in countries like Indonesia, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, UAE, Saudi, and across the world. And there are different double tax avoidance treaties, government has done with these, all of these countries. And a lot of times tax gets withheld by our customers, and we are not even able to claim it back in India. So that's one challenge on the previous topic. On the technology side, one of the key things is that we have seen that the current framework is still not very API driven, which means there's a lot of documentation upload download that happens from the systems. Even yesterday, I mean, it is a very recent example. Yesterday, one of our accounting team members was trying to download certain last year's returns filed on GST portal, and the portal was down. So the portal being down, downloads not happening, not enough APIs available, so that the accounting systems are not able to seamlessly talk to these reporting portals. All that increases the manual intervention that every company has to deal with, not just logistics, but every company. Logistics is a more high frequency business where there are multiple small transactions happen. So the number of invoices that you have to upload, the number of invoices that you have to communicate with the government portals was very, very high. And at the same time, even the receiving party has to do their filing and the matching has to happen. There's so much of automation possible. We are definitely supporting government's initiatives in terms of automation done over last 5 years, but there's a long roadmap to go in terms of truly making it digitized so that everybody can connect with the government systems, and then the data flow can be much more seamless and much more automated. That will reduce need for a lot of manual intervention on customer and vendor relationship at every single point in trade.
Okay, Gunjan, do you want to also address that question?
Yeah, I would just supplement. Dhruvil is absolutely right when he mentioned about GST. Clearly, government has come a long way, and with due credit, they have this time. The awareness campaigns have been enormous, and they have tried their best to educate assessees in terms of e-invoicing initiatives or even the automation of compliances, the GSTR 2B. But clearly, people are still evolving. So probably pandemic really pushed everybody into the deep end, that it was time that technology had to be adopted in every way possible. But clearly, we have a very, very long way to go in terms of, making assessees realize how important it is for them to be, completely driven by automation. But not just GST. I think particularly for logistics sector, the trouble is under customs law. The manual intervention which we still face in terms of customs clearances and something as simple as warehousing, where as per global standards a lot of activities are done using artificial intelligence, robots, and we are talking about voice command technology. Probably those are the areas which will push us to evolve from a taxation point of view as well. So clearly GST, while we have made some inroads, but customs we really have a long way to go.
Okay, Mr. Subramanian, while I will give you the opportunity to comment on, what changes in technology and, impetus from the government really you'd want to see on technology, two things that I would love for you to comment on. One is the export market for logistics, and the second is the import market. As far as the logistics industry is concerned, the divide perhaps not being as wide open previously as it is now in this post-pandemic world, in this post-COVID era. If businesses and entrepreneurs need to be supported both for export and import trade, and the domestic market for logistics needs to be strengthened. Just two or three things. I know it's a really broad area. Two or three things very briefly that you would want to see.
A very wide canvas question you are asking, but I can tell you in the pandemic era, in my view, the realignments which we see happening globally, as well as the need which has now come up in the country in terms of coming out of it and becoming economically stronger, I think opens up a window for exports, and government needs to provide all the support which they can for our exporters, especially the SMEs, to flourish. I think it's a longer debate. Yeah, the devil is in the detail, but in DHL, we have a catchphrase called "There is nothing basic about basics." Yeah, which is the problem in this country. We have exporters, we have SMEs who want to trade overseas. I see every week first-time exporters who really struggle, who get it all wrong, and they do it by making mistake. I think the enabling system has to improve, and there's a big opportunity in this country for SMEs to become flourish in the export market. But I think the handholding support mechanisms are very, very poor.
Gunjan, if the domestic market, let me make it, slightly more focused. If the domestic market for logistics needs to be strengthened, if opportunities in, say, tier 4, tier 3, tier 4 markets need to really be opened up for entrepreneurs who are looking at these areas, specifically, what would you like to see urgently being announced by the government, and what sort of strengthening really of entrepreneurs should be done?
More importantly, as already highlighted, what is lacking is the awareness. So while we have very ancient procedures in place, and unless we make them in line, not only simplify them, but also at the same time make sure that they are in accordance with the global standards. Because at the end of the day today, if we want to really make in India a true success, then we have to empower our domestic players more and more. And there's only one way to do it: simplification and cost efficiency.
All right, we're running out of time on this panel, but I do want to take closing comments at this point. Dhruvil, let me come to you first and talk about the overarching theme that we have here on Leaders of Tomorrow, Season 9, which is empowering a billion dreams. For an entrepreneur who's in the logistics space, whether they're using technology or not, whether they're looking at the export markets or the domestic markets, even as we've been talking about what the government should do to boost this space, what should entrepreneurs do to make themselves ready for the growth that's going to come back, hopefully, into the economy very soon?
I think for entrepreneurs, there's a great opportunity that they have in front of them. While India has definitely seen the hit in 2020 because of the pandemic, the coming years are going to again, the demand is going to pent up again. And one of the key ingredients to new age entrepreneurship is going to be going to be able to attract investments from the world. Currently, India is one of the key markets where global investors are eyeing on. If there are entrepreneurs who have appetite and aptitude to really go and seek that money, which can be invested into Indian market, there's a huge opportunity for logistics at every single leg of logistics, at every single type of logistics, every single segment of logistics. There's a need for transformation. A lot of large companies, including the likes of DHL, are leading from the front, but there are definitely niche areas where entrepreneurs can build focused ecosystems, and it will require a lot of capital. And India alone may not be able to offer that capital. Global investors are thriving for it, are interested in it right now. India is becoming a global story. India is being branded globally as well. The only thing government can do to help is to be able to make the procedure to seek global investments and make FDI even more easier. FDI is allowed fully, but it's to make it more easier from the taxation perspective, exit perspective, filing perspective, that would definitely be in favor of entrepreneurs. But of course, it's the entrepreneurs first who have to build concrete business models focused on India, which can attract global capital.
Do you think that will perhaps encourage more businesses to look at the domestic primary markets, Dhruvil, if some of these changes were being brought about to look and raise money here?
Absolutely. I think so. It is relatively much easier to raise money domestically, but the available capital pool domestically is limited versus globally, obviously, is more than 10 times more availability of capital. So while the opportunity for the customers and market resides in India, the capital has to flow from outside India so that enough building can happen, enough growth building can happen from India with Indian market by Indian companies.
Okay, Mr. Subramanian, the same question to you. What should entrepreneurs do? 2 or 3 top things that briefly you would want to tell them that they need to do to prepare for growth.
There are two evergreen topics again. Yeah. One is that when you talk about domestic market, the complexity and expands in the country gives huge opportunities. Yeah, there is an opportunity for big ideas in this country, but that has to be found out. There is no scope for a Me Too entrepreneur, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
When you talk about internationally, I think the weakness from our entrepreneurs and exporters many times is that they're not concentrating on value addition. These are all trading houses, and they just continue to trade. I think there is an opportunity for going up the value chain, being able to think big, look at larger markets, look at a variety of markets rather than the traditional markets where an obvious opportunity exists and where the margins are poor and therefore you are living with wafer thin margins. I think they should get their plot right. There are two ends of the spectrum. But I think the good thing is that today support systems are available for all of them. Unlike 10 years back, I think the ground is fertile. The bigger you think, I think the opportunity is bigger for you.
Okay. Gunjan, I'm going to let you have the last word. 8.6% CAGR in the 5 years leading up to 2020 is what reports suggest was the kind of growth that the logistics industry was looking at. I'm assuming a significant or at least some part of that has been shaved off in 2020. For 2021, what sort of growth are you looking at? What sort of trends would you want to leave our viewers with to say this is perhaps the 1 or 2 areas in the logistics space where you're anticipating growth will come in?
Despite the pandemic, it's a given that the sector has still been able to really, come up well, and companies have, despite all the challenges, have been able to perform better. And now the recovery is even, it's better in terms of growth. And in terms of the question that you asked about, what the domestic players need to do in terms of, so from a tax point of view, I would really say there are 2-3 aspects. Just to sum up in terms of what Dhruvil also said and Mr. Subramanian mentioned, for a player to thrive in India and for this growth to go to the next level, the most important thing would be that there has to be right kind of funding, and the government needs to ease out the norms for the funding to happen, so that domestic players have enough funds in terms of, to attract more investors and ensure more players in the sector. And also, having said that, then the whole process of setting up operations in India and then the post-compliance stage, the simplification of each and every step from beginning to end will lead us to a better growth, and also ensure that there are more and more players to encourage Make in India. Because each and every other sector is going to thrive on logistics sector. And until and unless we become enablers of, really bringing that kind of support to the logistics sector, the government has to provide that foundation, or else otherwise all the other sectors will also suffer.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. I know there's so much to be covered when we're talking about crucial industries like logistics, but we've run out of time on this panel today, unfortunately. Thank you to everyone who's joined us today. If you have any feedback for us, for those of you watching at home, do let us know. Our contact details is up on your screens as we speak. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.